Hey everyone, and welcome. So I've been doing a lot of research over the past couple weeks with your help, trying to uncover the story and the mystery of this 1964 Firebird and its original owner, and I think we've uncovered everything and more, and it actually includes Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page as well, and I've got the photo evidence to back it all up. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, so I want to tell you the story and what I know. To make a long story short, I bought this 64 Firebird out of LA from some kind of dealer, and it was a refinished guitar. I knew that, but it also had some weird issues, and I go over all this in the original video on the guitar. I'll put in the link down below. But basically, this is sort of an in-between of a Firebird 1 and a Firebird 3. So it has no binding, it has no vibrola or any sign of having one, but it has two pickups with the knobs and the switch. So in that video, I talked about some of these details and possibly what I think happened to this guitar, which I thought it was a Firebird 1 that was converted. So literally the day of me doing this video, I just opened up the back cover to take a second look inside and just see if I find any details. So I removed the back cover, and I actually find someone's handwritten name, address, and phone number in the back. And it reads Steve Badesky and an address in Pennsylvania. Now, I've had a few vintage guitars in the past where people will write their social or their initials or something like that, but more often than not, it just pretty much leads to a dead end. But I went ahead and put that information out on YouTube anyways to see if anyone could point me in the right direction to try to find some information on Steve. And sure enough, the emails start coming in, and we start to get a lot of information. The first thing I find out is that Steve passed away about 6 months ago, and allegedly he didn't have a whole lot of family, and someone sold off all of his parts and gear that he had accumulated. But Steve was, from what I know, pretty well respected in the community. He had ties to a lot of big R&B groups, and he even had ties to Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page. So actually my buddy Nick sends me a link to a Facebook profile, which I couldn't find because it was under Stevie. I start going through this public profile and finding basically everything written down from Steve himself and photos to go along with it. I start going through tons and tons of photos that are on this profile, which, by the way, it's incredibly rare that you even get to this point trying to track down original owners of guitars. I've tried to do it on my other guitars, and you never can get this far. Anyways, I actually come across a photo of Jimmy Page playing his famous Dragon Telecaster that Fender actually just released recently. It's a pretty famous guitar. And the photo shows Jimmy Page back with the Yardbirds in 1968. You can see the Telecaster there. Looks like it has the mirror pick guard. And then I continue to look, and there's another photo of Jimmy, this time standing in front of two 2x15 Showman cabinets. Again, this is 1968. The caption says it's in Pennsylvania. But Steve writes a little note that says that is him behind the cabinets there. I don't know how I can confirm this. I don't know if these photos have been seen before, or maybe these are relatively unknown photos. This is a pretty famous guitar, so I think someone here who's more educated with Jimmy Page history can tell us this. And it goes on to say in Steve's own words that this is a picture of Jimmy Page playing through two Fender dual Showmans belonging to Steve with JBL speakers in them. He was renting the amps to them and traveling with them most of the time for a few months before the Yardbirds broke up. He goes on to say that he worked on the Dragon Telecaster, and Jimmy used string gauges 8-42 on the guitar. His band from Greensburg, Red Rooster, rented equipment to them back in the late 60s. So if this is true, that's a pretty fascinating story, that Steve essentially backlined gear for Jimmy Page in the Yardbirds when he was playing that famous Dragon Telecaster. I found other posts of Steve saying that he sold Jimmy Page a 1965 Telecaster as well during this time period. I don't know which guitar that would be. If there's photos of that guitar, haven't been able to find any. There's also a picture of a signature to Steve from Jimmy Page, and I think other members of the Yardbirds. So that alone is pretty cool, but it goes even further. So I come across a photo of a stage setup with these marshals and showmans, and it looks pretty ridiculous, everything that's on stage. It gives you a glimpse into what these setups were like. And it appears to be 1968, it says in Maine somewhere. And then I see a photo of a band, a very 60s style band, playing on this same stage. It looks like what might be a early 60s green Jazzmaster guitar, which would be crazy rare. And then Steve says he's pictured on the right playing, I assume, a guitar, but you really cannot see in the photo. But then you can see really what was going on here. Steve was opening up for Jimi Hendrix, and you can see Jimi Hendrix on the same stage with the marshals in the background, the showmans on the right side, Noel Redding on bass, the whole thing. So Steve opened up for Jimi Hendrix in 1968 somewhere in Maine. There could be a bootleg audio of this show somewhere. The Jimi Hendrix historians can check in and confirm what show this was, but you can only imagine the stories this guy might have had opening up for Jimi Hendrix and knowing Jimmy Page. So this is an interesting backstory on Steve, but I don't have any information as to did Jimi Hendrix pick up the Firebird backstage or did Jimmy Page try it out. I don't have any of those details. Those stories are probably lost forever. However, I came across a photo, sort of a studio-looking photo of supposedly Steve on the right here and someone else playing a Firebird 1 sitting down. And you can see actually that this is definitely a Firebird 1. It's got two knobs and a jack on the bottom, no vibrola tailpiece, no neck pickup, and you can see there's no binding on the guitar. So this is 100% a Firebird 1 sometime in the late 60s. Now there were only a few hundred of these guitars made ever, so the chances are astronomical that this was a different guitar shown in this photo. The story is explained even further because I come across another photo of Steve shown on the right here. I'm not sure who's on the left, but you can see in this photo Steve holding a Firebird. Now what's interesting about this bird is that it has no binding and it has a humbucker in the neck and what looks like maybe is a humbucker in the bridge. So this is a Firebird 1 sometime in the late 60s, early 70s that's been routed out for two humbuckers, which explains exactly what I was thinking in the initial video, that this guitar was a Firebird 1. That's why it has no binding and no vibrola, and it was actually routed out for humbuckers and then converted back to mini humbuckers. That's what I figured. That's kind of the conclusion that we came to with the initial video on this guitar. And now I've got two photos with Steve, the original owner, showing a Firebird 1 in one photo, totally stock, and then later a Firebird 1 with two humbuckers. Like I said, the odds that that's a different guitar are astronomical. It's just, that's the guitar. So in my mind, I have no doubt about it, although I haven't spoken to Steve. Unfortunately, he's passed. So the plan going forward, later this week, I want to take the guitar apart and look and find any clues to confirm without a doubt this was a Firebird 1. One of the biggest details, I think, is that a Firebird 1 would have had a channel just for the wiring of the single pickup, but it would not have had the channel for the switch here. So if we find that this switch route is homemade, I think that pretty much guarantees this really was a Firebird 1. So I want to look into that. I've got a new bridge coming in the mail because I can't deal with the look of these 70s intonated bridges. Bridge pickup is a little bit weak, so I might send it off to my pickup guy, Joel, to see what's going on, if we can maybe bring this pickup back to life a little bit. And we're going to do a little bit of work, bring it back to original as much as we can. Firebird parts are extremely hard to come by. The pick guard is probably going to be the hardest problem for me. And we're going to try to do just an honest restoration to this thing and get it playing and sounding right. So we'll look into it this week. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this journey, and it's been super fun. You guys have been really helpful trying to locate information on this guitar, and that's the beauty of YouTube. You know, I cannot believe that we were able to go back and find the story of the original owner, let alone that it involved Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page, and finding pictures of the guitar, and it really doesn't happen. I guess if you buy enough guitars, you might get lucky one time, but maybe it's luck. Who knows? So stay tuned. We'll be getting into that this week, and I want to thank you guys one last time for all of your help helping me build this channel. It's incredible, so I'm very thankful. Peace, everyone.